Hello, welcome to another My Top 5 episode. So yeah, I'm on a bit of a jag with these at the moment. There was a triumphant return to these, I think last week, where I did my top 5 films set in a dystopian world. And yeah, the key thing with these is I don't spend a lot of time mulling over them for most things. What I tend to do, and often this is one of the best ways I think to do top 5 lists, is just think of the top 5 things that just come to mind there and then without too much effort, and just run with that. Because a lot of these top 5s that I know when I come up with them, when I think of things, can change from day to day. So this morning I was sitting down at breakfast, enjoying my normal bowl of oats with nice hot chocolate and a crumpet with some nice, what was it now I had? Blackcurrant jam on it. And I had my piece of paper, which I have here, and I was writing out these 5 things. So I thought I should do 5 aphorisms. And up front, I'm going to, spoiler alert, here's the 5 that I'm going to be talking about. So these are the 5 that came to mind this morning. 5 sort of personal aphorisms that have, I think, served me well over the years, and I've stumbled across or rediscovered or noticed that I do them already or adhere to them already. And the 5 are: will my body thank me for this? The map is not the territory. I am not doomed to see myself through other people's eyes, and there's various variations on that phrasing. For you can only do your best, and in brackets I put in the circumstances. And then number 5, the most popular answer is not the most accurate answer. So what I'm going to talk about in this video is how I sort of stumbled across, discovered, however you want to think of it, those aphorisms, the sort of context, and then look at and just point towards, very briefly, what I think is the sort of underlying principle behind this. And I will include in the descriptions, in the description on the video, all of the links I've got on here. Again, I'm using Wikipedia as a neurological support. So I'll include an article, so just so you're clear on exactly what an aphorism is. So as it says here, it's a concise, terse, laconic or memorable expression of a general truth or principle. I would say these are more principles than absolute truths. So for me, they're personal principles, personal aphorisms. And they're often handed down by tradition from generation to generation. And several of these, I think, have come from, from other people, I suppose, in some way. Either friends, acquaintances. One I sort of worked out for myself, and the other one I've read somewhere, I think, yeah. But 3 out of the 5 are ones that have sort of been said to me, if you like, from other people. And I'll talk a little bit about that, these sort of origin stories, as I go along. So yeah, let's talk about the first one, which is, will my body thank me for this? So maybe I'll explain when I first had it's like when you have that aha moment where you go, yeah, that really makes sense. And then it's like, yeah, I suppose I sort of do that already in some cases. So basically, several years ago now, I don't know, sometime in the 2010s, I was sitting in the dentist chair, and I was having a wisdom tooth removed, and it wasn't really giving me any trouble at that point, but as is the case with wisdom teeth, it's in one of those, sometimes you get them in really awkward positions where you could have trouble later on. And I was having some other dental work done anyway, so it's like, while I'm in here, it was planned, but it was just felt a little bit like that. So and it came out real easy, actually, which surprised me, because I've had other problems with teeth proving very unwilling to extract. But yeah, that came out super easy, just popped out. I didn't even notice, like, is it out yet? Oh yeah, it's out. And anyway, my dentist, after he finished, said, oh, by the way, he said there was a little bit of infection in there, which I hadn't realised, and I don't think it had been picked up in anything prior to that. And he said, but I pop some antibiotic in there, and you'll be good. You're good to go, basically. Job done. And he then said, yeah, your body's going to thank you for that. And I sort of thought, that's a really interesting way of thinking about it. And he was talking about the dealing with the infection. So then that got me thinking about, the whole part of, as I've got up on the screen here, like self-reflecting on things. And so I suppose broadly, as I put down this morning, this idea of asking yourself, if you're going to eat something or do anything, like, ask yourself, like, will my body thank me for this? And you can take it broader than that, like, anything. Will the universe thank me for this? And if you take it to what would you call it? Like a very broad term. Will X thank me for Y? Thinking about it like mathematically, I suppose, or logically. So to me, that all falls in the container of self-reflection and self-awareness, and knowing one's place in the universe, in the bigger picture, but also personally. Like there was an interesting. There was a talk with. I think I'd mentioned in another video. I'd been listening to a lot of talks by the person that wrote The Beach, and Alex Garland also did Ex Machina. And he's a really interesting guy to listen to, actually. But he was talking a lot about self-destruction. And he made this really interesting point is we all have the seeds of our own self-destruction. And the point he was making is, as you get to know people better, you sometimes, over time, it's sort of, you find out, not because you want to use it against them, but it just comes out. You start to appreciate people's sort of self-destructive habits. And he was just pointing out that even the most sort of, what would you call it, like self-possessed people, that seem very in control, over time, you get to understand, like, or appreciate what they have self-destructive habits as well. And so this whole, will my body thank me for this? It sort of falls into that whole reflection on self-destructive habits, I think. So. And the other thing that, it gets you to appreciate, I think, is the whole nature of causality, and one's place in the world as a, as an actor, if you like, as a verb, as a doing thing, rather than just a noun, but as a verb, as a doing thing. I've read also some quote way back. Some scientists had commented on that, how they felt that they weren't a noun, they felt like a verb, which I thought was really cool. It's fun. That's why I like doing these episodes, is I sort of try and pre-prep very quickly, like what might be the underlying principles behind what I'm talking about. And then other stuff comes to mind. I think, oh yeah, I wish I'd delved a bit deeper and had those up on the screen. But anyway, that's part of the fun, is just diving in. And also this whole business of self-reflection, touches on other stuff that interests me, like the concept of the middle way in Buddhism, and the eightfold path, Four Noble Truths, eightfold path, that sort of stuff, and Taoism, another sort of, I suppose, middle way type tradition. And then this, which I didn't know what the word was for, which I got really interested in when I was studying Qigong several years ago, which is internal alchemy, as it's called. Or is that Noidan? I think that's how you pronounce it. Noidan Shu. And it's a fascinating rabbit hole to go down, actually, if you've got any interest at all in either alchemy or things like gnosis, that sort of stuff. Mysticism. Internal alchemy in sort of Taoism is fascinating. And you get into whole areas of things like Qi, Qigong, but also this almost like two approaches within internal alchemy. There's one, the sort of medicinal aspects, like potions and stuff like that, which doesn't really interest me. I don't think my body will thank me for those sort of things. But the bit I'm more interested in is the sort of physical exercises like Qigong. I think there's something called the 8 pieces of the brocade. 8 pieces of the brocade. I think that's what it's called, where there's these sort of 8 exercises that you can do, which help reinforce your qi. But yeah, it's fascinating if you've never gone down that rabbit hole and you're interested in those sort of alchemical ideas. So not really interested in the magic mushroom side of things, but I just find the sort of spiritual meditation practice, so things like that, really interesting. And to me, that's all connected in with, will my body thank me for this? And then your body, again, using the body in the broadest term here. So the next one that was on my list, if you remember, was the map is not the territory. Now, this comes originally from, I'm going to mangle this name probably, Alfred Korzybski, I think that's pronounced, Korzybski, who I actually wasn't aware of the connection to him until really recently. So my exposure to this, I suppose, or how I became aware of the idea, wasn't through here it's mentioning Marshall McLuhan, even though I'm aware of his work, again, well after discovering the phrase. I don't even think they're going to mention it here, but it comes up a lot, like Prometheus Rising, Gregory Bateson as well, Steps to an Ecology of Mind. Let me just scroll down a bit and then see if how I discovered it is mentioned in here. No, it's not. Okay, so let me talk about that then. So sometime in the end of the 90s, like 1998, is when I became self-employed. And anybody that's gone through that process will know that sometimes you can do a bit of toe dipping before you go self-employed. So maybe you're working somewhere else, you're building up a client base, and then you start your business and you've actually got a few clients already. But because of the nature of my work, and at that point I was working for a valuated reseller doing custom modifications on an accounting system using like a 4GL that was shrink wrapped into the accounting system. And we had these really big, huge clients at the time. And I decided that I wanted to go into more application support, training, troubleshooting for small businesses and mainly home users actually. And it didn't really overlap too well with that. So, and also I signed a restricted covenant to say I couldn't take any clients with me when I left the firm. So as going over, I had to build my client base from nothing. And during that period, I didn't have much to do apart from write out training materials and doing research. And obviously I needed to be earning money. So there's two things I did to supplement my income. Actually three. So one was I went back as a contractor to the firm and I'd agreed to do anything connected with training and troubleshooting, but I didn't want to do any programming. It put me off programming actually quite a bit, doing accounting programming. But that wasn't because of the accounting program, it was just the nature of the work we were doing or the jobs we were taking on. And so that was one thing. So I got a few training contracts through them to go off out on their behalf and do training, because I was one of only two people at the firm that had received training in the original system, because they were moving over to an object-oriented programming system, of which I wasn't part of the movement over, which was part of sort of while I left. I was sort of left behind, holding the baby, so to speak, while everybody else got to play with the new shiny tools, because I was so competent in the original language. That tends to come back to haunt you, unfortunately. So that was one thing. The other thing was I took on a job as a sessional lecturer at East Surrey College, and the third thing was I answered an ad in a local paper, funnily enough, for someone who wanted to have some IT trainers in on contract. And this is where I stumbled across the map is not the territory idea. So the guy that owned it, very nice guy, got me loads of work, and how it worked was that he was a management consultant that did work for lots of really interesting organisations, mainly within the voluntary sector. So organisations like Shelter, those sort of organisations are all sort of within the voluntary sector. And other places, like there's a place in London called the Evelyn Oldfield unit that trains sort of trainers for liaison with people within the wider community, particularly like the refugee community. And so I got to meet loads of really interesting people. But the reason why he wanted people is he wasn't an expert in IT training. So he wanted a few people to go in where the clients had been asking him about doing IT training and he wasn't able to offer it. So I would go in and we'd do that. Now, part of the sort of makeup was that he was really interested in accelerated learning techniques and had become interested in neurolinguistic programming. And one of the sort of adages, aphorisms within NLP, among many, is the map is not the territory. Now, neurolinguistic programming can be a bit of a contentious area, particularly nowadays. There's a lot of slightly, let's say, dubious individuals that have come out of the woodwork over the years. But also, you could argue that a lot of the aphorisms and the stuff that it's built on, in terms of provability, it is a little bit shaky. But one term that I learned early on, which was really useful, is the map is not the territory. So this idea, whenever you look at anything, it's a map a lot of the time. And it's a map for lots of different reasons. Maybe you're just trying to create like a heuristic or a rule of thumb, or a model to just basically get you by in terms of being able to interact with whatever this thing is. So, we create these maps. So that's one aspect. The other thing is, when you look at anything, you're looking at it through your own lens, which might be different from someone else's lens. So, you're dealing with a situation where everybody's got their own map for the same territory. But also it reminds me that the only way of getting close to the territory is by being in the territory. So that's the other thing. So, the fact in the first place, whatever representation you're using of something, you're mistaking the map for the territory, but also encouraging you to explore the territory more and to get acquainted with it. So you may not ending up knowing the territory, but it'll improve your map of that territory. And, obviously leads into things like critical thinking, can loop back to self-reflection if it's concerning the sort of map territory relationship, within oneself as well. And it's funny, a lot of these, you could argue, actually all lead back to internal alchemy, I suppose, in some way or other. And the third one is, I am not doomed to see myself through other people's eyes. And there's variations on this, but underneath it all, to me, it's an empowerment statement or aphorism that imparts autonomy, self-determination on oneself. So it's representing your interests but responsibility, because sometimes you obviously do want to see the world through other people's eyes. That's helpful, but you don't want to be doomed to see everything about yourself through other people's eyes, because again, flipping back to this map territory relationship, maps are wrong, and people negotiate the world through maps, or maps are not accurate. So underneath it all is this whole sort of empowerment thing, and when I'm trying to think when I first came across. So I first came across this as a sort of statement, probably only a year ago. I can't remember what I was reading. It was something to do with self-determination and autonomy, and that was that statement: I am not doomed to see myself through the eyes. I think it was through others. It was something like that. I'm not doomed to see myself through others, and I sort of changed it up a bit. But then I started thinking about a principle that I explored again in the 2010s. I was basically teaching. So, as I'd mentioned when I was talking about being involved with a consultant, I'd gone on to be a sessional lecturer at Red Hill College, and by that point everything had picked up. Like, I think, ton of work for the consultants. I wasn't really doing so much work for my old firm. That sort of faded away in the background as I trained more people to do my job than I used to do. So I trained, like, I think 3 people in total, no, 4 actually, to do what I was doing, and to basically be able to use the old programming language that I was using. And that obviously dialed back, because I'd sort of trained the trainers on the trainer thing, and the college was picking up, but my own business was picking up, and I was getting involved with more and more stuff as well at the college. So I was normally, I think, tasked to do a day and an evening and I was teaching information management information systems, which sort of morphed into other things as well, like project management. So I was working for the business school, and then I got involved with work for the computer school over there, which is a sort of natural progression. And then involved with some initial negotiations with, I think was it Roehampton University? I think that's right, about a foundation degree, which never materialised. I was really looking forward to that. And in some ways I'm glad it didn't because it happened about a year or two before the whole move to Canada stuff started to kick off. And I would have been in a real situation if I'd been involved in that foundation degree, because I really wanted to do it so badly, and it didn't come about. We didn't get funding in the end. I'm not sure why. It was funny, actually. Maybe I should save this for a different video, but there were, I think, 8 modules on the course. Was it more than that? I think, no, there was probably more than that on the so I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Foundation year, would that have been 8? Maybe it was 8 modules. But there weren't many people at the college that wanted to teach it. They were all very comfortable in their sort of, teaching up to A-level stuff. And I had a postgraduate diploma in computing and manufacturing. So the general rule is you teach sort of one below your qualification. So, obviously postgraduate, I should be teaching undergraduates. And there was one exception. Technically the diploma in management studies was first year postgrad level. Yeah. First year postgrad. But there it's a bit more, it's not quite so strict, I suppose. Because I was teaching like a subsection within it, just like one single unit in information management. And but for the foundation degrees, I'm going off on a bit of a waffle here, but it all adds to the rich tapestry of life. So for the foundation degrees, it's fine, but that was the trouble. It got locked into. So I got experience in, and I'd been, had different qualifications that I'd taken, professional qualifications in object-oriented programming, AI, stuff. I think was, I don't know if at that point I was doing. Yeah, I was. I'd already done my web applications development course, because I stood in for someone for a year doing web development, and I leveraged those course materials for the course. I think what I'd learnt as part of that as well. And so I was what people would term, I hate this term, a very good resource. Yeah, don't ever like that way of thinking about people, but that's the way they viewed me. So what was funny was that every time we went along for negotiations, and Roehampton were on board with this. So the setup was we were doing the first year of their degree for them in East Surrey, and then it would lead into their program, and they'd finish the rest of the degree in Roehampton. And so we'd sit down for this negotiation, and it would be, we need someone to teach this unit. So we'd be going through the units together, representatives from East Surrey College, of which I was one, and representatives from Roehampton, lovely people. And they go, so we go, we need to do this module. So it's like, you can do that, can't you? I'll be going, well, yeah. Do you want to do that one then? Well, yeah. So like it would just tick up and up, and then there was someone else we'd scheduled to do another unit, and then they dropped out, basically. So it's like, so we were going through, well, we've got this person who's dropped out, unfortunately, and they turned to me and go, you can do that, can't you? I go, yeah, I can. Okay, well, we're fine with you doing that. And I'll be going, hang on, I'm teaching 5 units on an 8 unit. I think it was that. It might have been even higher. I was saying to this, because we're doing it on behalf of Roehampton, do you have a problem with that? And they're going, no. So it's like, okay. So it would have been pretty lucrative because I would have insisted on being a sessional still. Probably I suppose I could have been a 0.5, but it worked out better for me because I was using my own stuff I'd written anyway for clients to actually be a sessional and do it that way and just get paid appearance money because and then put it through the business legally, but it just worked better for me. The pay was better. And I could negotiate like what's called A rates as well, because no one else wanted to do stuff. So anyway, so I've gone completely off topic here, but it leads me into this. So what was happening was, and the point of the long story was that I was getting offered a lot of different projects at the college, and there was a lot of stuff involved with training businesses as well. I'd suggest, why don't we open up our training suite to outside organisations, and I can do like training Word and Outlook and various other things. And so the sort of business school had cottoned on that I was a bit of a, again, an business wild card, actually, not just an IT wild card, but a business wild card. So it's like, what would happen is at the end of the year when we'd have some downtime, and they'd have all these business students kicking around. They go, oh, they've still got like 3 weeks of their course here. They've finished everything else. They'd really like you to do some other stuff. Because I was getting requests for they go, oh, this other thing. We'd really like to know about it for work. Can we ask the course leader to do, like, you do an extra week, on something. So I said, yeah, we'll just write a list down. So anyway, we got to the end of the year and people were sort of picking my brains. They said, oh, do you know any cool sort of techniques we can use to think about things? So I said, yeah, let me think about it. And I stumbled across this and used it, something called Johari window. So this is really useful if you're trying to sort of put your place in the world. So the idea here is this is sort of things you know about yourself, things you don't know about yourself, things that others know about you, and things that others don't know about you. And you end up with these 4 panes. So what's called the arena, so that's everything that's known by both parties. There's the blind spot, so that's other things others know about you but you don't know about yourself. So that's where it is useful to see yourself through other people's eyes. It's for blind spot stuff. You've got stuff you notice known to self but not known to others, so that's the facade. And this area which is unknown. It also indirectly made me understand what, and I can't remember who it was now, when they were going on in some interview about the unknown unknowns. It's actually taking something like Johari window and applying it to other domains. I also came across it in previously in neurolinguistic programming, actually, where you're talking about things like competence, conscious competence, unconscious competence, something like that. It brushes on similar concepts. The other interesting thing about this is with the 4 quadrants is you have to visualize this as moving. So the window isn't necessarily supposed to be equally spaced. And the idea is so supposing you've got stuff in the blind spot, well, that once you realize and you end up knowing what, these blind spot things, they move into the arena. So this pane here, this dividing line, sort of moves here in this direction. And then the same with the facade, as you sort of become a little bit more open, I suppose. Stuff that you know about yourself, but others don't know, this moves as well, this line here. And then you get other movement as well from the unknown. May well move into the blind spot, it may move into the facade, or it may move straight into here, depending on circumstances. And then this area ultimately gets smaller and smaller. That's the idea. But the reason why I brought it up is because it's quite a useful tool if you both don't want to be doomed to see yourself through the other people's eyes, but also do want to, self-improve on top of that. So, yeah. So I'll include a link to that. Yeah. But it's a cool idea because you can change this up a bit and use it in risk assessment. So you can think about a system, like what do you know about your system, and what do others know about your system. And so this could be you, this could be you, and this could be hackers. Stuff about you know about the system, stuff hackers know about the system, and real useful as a risk management tool as well, I think. Okay, so the fourth one is you can only do your best. This is one of my dad's favourite ones. And so I very much put this in the area of like self-actualization. So, recognising your potential. And so, knowing what you're capable of, but also acknowledging that, when things don't work out, unless you were completely pathological or not really paying attention or just being lazy, when things don't work out, often you've tried your best. And so, most of the time, you can just only do your best under the circumstances. And where this came from originally, like I said, this is one of my dad's thing, and it really sort of turned me around. So I've always really struggled with studying. It seemed to take me an exorbitant amount of time to learn anything compared to my peers. Maybe it's inaccurate and I need to assess my Johari window, I don't know. But I've found that, and it takes me a lot of work particularly to remember stuff. So I used to really struggle at sort of, not struggle so much, but I always felt that to get where I wanted to be at school, it required an awful lot of effort. And also I seemed to be suffering from a number of different setbacks that weren't through my own making, to do with the way things were streamed. Like, when I went to school, people were streamed for different things like maths and biology and the different things I wanted to study when I was sort of got to 14 and had to choose my O-levels. And I found that I get put into certain streams based on class sizes. So maybe I wasn't quite at a high enough level, even though I did well in an exam. There was a certain cut-off, so I ended up having to then do really, really well in exams to sort of, re-get myself up the slippery pole. And that happened both in mathematics, which I thought I was really good at, and biology, and I think something else as well. So yeah, I felt like I was really battling. And then when I came to sit my exams and do my exams at 16, I did terribly in a lot of the exams. Not as well as I wanted in the ones I did pass, and also failed some of the ones I thought I was going to pass. And so I remember when my exams came through, my dad just simply said to me, well, you can only do your best, which I thought was really cool of him. And so I thought about it, and so at that point I thought, well, maybe I just wasn't ready. So I went back, stayed on a year, and my parents had always hoped there wasn't any sort of force thing, and they'd put a number. It was really cool, actually. They put a number of things in place should I want to go to university, but they didn't tell me about it. So it was a completely free choice on my part. Now, I didn't end up going to university at that point. I ended up studying my postgrad through the Open University and doing my undergrad stuff through work. I did 4 years of undergraduate study working in labs. So it turned out okay in the end. But I decided to stay on a year, see what would happen, and then maybe then do, A-levels. But I did my year. I was a year behind by that point. So I then decided I felt like I needed to repay my debt to society at that point, and decided I wanted to go out to work. I'm glad I did, but I was always curious how things may have turned out differently. But yeah, so what happened when, after staying on a year, that I just aced everything. All of the new exams, I decided to take a whole load of new exams, and not even bother with the stuff that I'd failed. So take a fresh look at things and redo some of the stuff. So even though I passed chemistry, I took environmental chemistry to get a better grade, which I did. I had passed maths, so that was fine. Instead of retaking biology, I did human biology. I did statistics, which was really cool. So I did statistics for a year. I did geology for a year, which was really cool. What else did I do? There's a few other things, I think. I retook English, I think twice. Although I did already have a CSE in English anyway, so it didn't matter too much. I'd already got my CSE in computer studies. Actually, that was a really good example where class size and who was in the class dictated what qualification we took. But again, I was glad I took a CSE instead of an O-level, because with the CSE I did more coursework, so I did more coding, and I ended up with a grade 1 anyway. So I was pretty happy. I didn't have to study the history of computing, and I didn't have to study low-level programming, Cecil at the time. So, yeah. So, and that was the best exam I did. My first pass when I was 16 was in my computer studies. Why didn't I take the hint at the time instead of going down a microbiology, immunology rabbit hole? Who knows? But anyway, I suppose my point is, after all that, is that sometimes, it takes a while to achieve what you want to achieve, because at the time you couldn't achieve it, that was genuinely your best. And so you've just got to, actualize yourself, improve your potential, and then your best becomes better than it was. And of course, again, circumstances are so dependent as well. Things just conspire against individuals, unfortunately, and the world is such a chaotic place as well. In addition to, acts of maliciousness and negativity in the world, beyond that, I find that the universe to be a quite chaotic thing as well. But yeah, so thanks, Dad, for the you can only do your best axiom. It served me well, and yeah, it's definitely one that I sort of hold dear. Also, part of it is there is an element of obviously moral responsibility as well in all of this, that I think links into thinking about, how one can do one's best in life. So finally we get onto this one, which is one that this is the fifth one. The most popular answer is not the most accurate answer. And this is one I sort of stumbled across myself and came up with before I saw stuff like this, through a bitter pill I had to swallow. This is quite unbelievable. I can smile about it because it wasn't a big deal, but it does show how stuff can happen. And like I say, it wasn't a major thing, it wasn't life changing, but sometimes things that don't change your life but seem idiotic educate you in keeping an eye out for stuff. So yeah, the most popular answer is not the most accurate answer. And again, this is I suppose something that came about through some excellent help I received again from my dad. I'm really lucky in that my parents have been really supportive over the years for me and my brothers actually, and have always been there at all the sort of trying moments in my life and my brothers' lives. So yeah, it's a lot of my successes. It's like anything, my successes are really me standing on the shoulders of giants. I don't consider myself to be, though I'm talking about self-actualization, I've found that I've got places through, the assistance of others, and that's played quite a big part in that. But at the same case in point, I think is, and one actually that I could have added a sixth aphorism, which is I think from Kant, which is one that I always think about, which is treat people as ends in themselves, not as a means to an end. So I've never tried to do that through exploiting people, but only where people have sort of given their help freely. I always try to remember to treat people as ends in and of themselves and not as means to an end. Anyway, moving back to this, the most popular answer is not the most accurate answer. So I was really struggling in maths with long division. It was one area that I was weak on. And so my dad's always been really good at math. It's not something he ever pursued as a career, but it's I think had time been different, because he was born of an era when a lot of people didn't go to university and went out and studied a trade. But he's really good, with what I call old-fashioned maths, So anyway, so I came home from school with this assignment. It's like, I can't understand any of this. I can do bits of it. So they sat me down and said, okay, I'll give you a hand, but I'm not going to do it for you. We're going to do it together. We're going to sit down and work through this and sort of work through it. So we sat down, and by the end of it, I understood long division, and we'd got everything written down and got all the answers. So I was really pleased. So going to school the next day, whenever the assignment was due, and sitting down in class. Anyway, the usual teacher wasn't there, and it wasn't a trainee teacher. It was, what do they call, like a supply teacher? So ones that sort of fill in when other teachers are sick. So this guy, I'd never seen him before, turns up. He goes, okay, what homework had everybody been given? So we get out this, sheet of the stuff we've been given. And it was, the plan was to get it marked as we went along. It was just homework. We weren't being graded on it as far as I know. So he looks at it and goes, oh, we'll take a vote on it. So he would get somebody in the class to suggest an answer to this long division problem. And so, and of course, remember, this was probably pre-calculator days may have been. I know we had all log tables and stuff like that. I did have a calculator at some point, but I'm just trying to remember. Anyway, you weren't supposed to do it with the calculator, but and you had to show your working. But so someone would shout out a value, and then he'd get hands up who got the same answer. So this went on for all 15, however many it was. So by the end of it, I had 3 wrong based on this system, based on this whole idea of, what's the most popular answer, and we'll go with that. So I took the stuff home, and of course at that point I thought, this class, I assumed, what was interesting about the class is it contained a lot of people from a particular form. So, a form is like a group of... one of the classes within the form. So I think at that point it would have been 4th or 5th form. And we had about I don't know what it was, about, was it 8? Might have been even more, might have been 16. So 16 classes, and of which, so hang on, let me get this right. So 6th year, 4th year, and then, but you were a form within that, and I'm trying to remember the right term, but basically it was just, so the whole year was divided into 16 classes, and you had I think it was called a form teacher for your class, and you'd have registration with them at the start of the day. And then during the course of the day, you'd be in different classes for different subjects, and you would be with other people within the same year, but from a different form, whatever they were calling it. So there was one group of individuals who I really looked up to, and I was friendly with, and it just seemed to be one of those situations where this particular group of individuals had all miraculously been grouped together, so that it seemed like the best athletes and the best brains were in this same group, in this same form. And because I think it had all numbers, there'd be form 4C, form A, 4B, 4D. The D, A, B, C didn't mean anything. It was just a way of dividing up. But say, I might be in 4A and they were in 4C. And so when we had maths, we'd have people from, say, 4A, 4B, 4C, 4D that were in that stream of maths. And I think we were in the second stream. Right, so there were 2 top stream, 1 and 2. We were in the second class, so 1 and 2 were the top stream. And so, I was in one of those 2 classes. And so I already assumed these people in this form were really smart. And it was some of them were both smart and athletic, or so I thought. So anyway, so I bring my assignment home to my dad. He goes, "Oh, how do you get it? 15 out of 15 or whatever." He said, "No, 13." He said, "What?" So we went back through them, and a second time, So go back through it again. So we get to the three that supposedly were wrong, and we check back through, and two of them were right, definitely right, and the third one we'd made there was a transcription error, we realised, and made a small mistake which had put the value out by a certain amount, like 1 or 2, whatever. So it's like, okay, fair enough, but how did the teacher then get? And I explained to my dad, well, he voted on it. So my dad, back then you didn't really do it. Parents didn't turn up at school, raising their fists, so he didn't really do anything about it. But he was pretty miffed. I was sort of pretty miffed. So anyway, a few days later, I never saw this guy ever again, the teacher, because he was like I say, just a stand-in. And that would often happen. You might never see them again. And so I was friendly with these people in this other form. So I was chatting to one of them. I said, you did really well on that paper, didn't you? I said, can you show me how you got your answer? And he said, I didn't do the homework. He said, well, I just came in on the day and copied it off of this other person. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. And he said, yeah, a load of us did it. So what had happened was, they'd literally gone in, quite a number of them that were in this math lesson from this form had gone in on the day of, we were supposed to hand it in, spoken to the brainiest person in the maths class who was in there, or one of them, who'd actually got several of them wrong anyway, and just copied it out. And that's why there were so many people raising their hands for certain answers, which was deemed right. And these were all questions where, only a few amount of people would say, oh yeah, we got the same answer, but it was enough to tip the balance, because it was the higher value questions which were harder. The most popular answer is not the most accurate answer. And so that's why I brought this up. There's a couple of interesting things or books about this, Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. And so, how relying on crowds' opinions can go horribly wrong for a variety of reasons. There's also a book called The Wisdoms of Crowds. I did a series actually called The Wisdom or Madness of Crowds, which I can't find anymore on my channel. So I must have removed it. And it was about, I can't remember, it was a Magic the Gathering related one actually. I was looking at, I think, deck choices in the week. For a week or a month in terms of the meta. Yeah, so the wisdom or madness of crowd. So whenever I see that, it always reminds me of, the most popular answer is not the most accurate answer. And that's, I sort of came to that conclusion at the time, and that sort of served me well. Whenever I look at group decisions or anything, I always think, oh, how was this answer arrived at? Was it arrived at by a sort of vote or popular opinion? And if so, what was that based on? And is it the case that someone has been copying someone else's work and the original work was actually wrong? And so it leads you down interesting rabbit holes while you sort of debate the issue of, popularity of answers and accuracy of answers and delusions and superstitions and stuff like that. Two interesting ways it can take you is, one, the whole cargo cult phenomenon, and secondly, something called pigeon superstition, which is superstition in the pigeon. So this was as a result of some sort of work that Skinner was doing back in the day on hungry pigeons, and getting them to peck at various mechanisms to, I think, deliver food. But what they'd done, it's a bit ethically rather dubious with some of these things. And they would set this stuff up so that there was no reference in actual fact to the bird's behaviour. And so the pigeons then started associating the delivery of the food with whatever chance action they had when they'd been performing it when it was delivered. And they then started performing those actions in the hope that it would deliver the food. So they said one bird was conditioned to turn counterclockwise about the cage, making 2 or 3 turns between reinforcements. Another repeatedly thrust its head into one of the upper corners of the cage. A third developed a tossing response, as if placing its head beneath an invisible bar and lifting it repeatedly. 2 birds developed pendulum motion of the head and body, in which the head was extended forward and swung from right to left, with a sharp movement followed by somewhat slower return. So yeah. Now there's some disputing, I think, of this, but there's, I suppose a lot of it is trying to explain why, where there's probably dispute over it. But I think certainly I've seen examples of where that, what's called pigeon superstition, it extends outside of pigeons, where people will do a certain set of things in the belief that it's going to make something else happen, or not doing certain things, and whether or not that originally was based on this setup is another matter. But again, it's an interesting thought to think about how how we come to certain conclusions and how we believe certain things. I always think, and again, a lot of the time it's more thinking about myself, and I try not to judge others, but a lot of the time it's like, what are my pigeon superstitions and my cargo cult-like things that probably I'm best off not adhering to. Anyway, hopefully that was interesting, and I didn't go off too many rabbit holes. Well, I do know I went down a whole little load of rabbit holes. If nothing else, you can use this as a video to send you to sleep at night. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.